The advent of AI is heralding a new era for organizations and business leaders globally. Amid widespread change, many believe AI has the potential to expedite growth, creativity, and impact. But the question remains, just how genuine is AI? Is it propaganda or is it the real deal? Is it potentially the best assistant you've had to date? In a digital-centric world, do business leaders truly understand the skills their workforces bring to the table? Are we equipped to foresee and meet the workforce needs of tomorrow? And what's the role of AI in helping us to get there? And what are the safeguards to make sure that if it is the assistant we all dream of, that it's right for the business? Well, we're going to get into that and a whole lot more. So grab a coffee, strap in. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Jason Daniels, Chief Digital Officer for UK from Fujitsu, Darminder Singh Ghataoura, who's the CTO for AI data science across defence and national security. And to keep us honest and make sure this isn't just about Fujitsu saying what we want to be saying, we've brought in Lydia Kostopoulos, who's a senior tech advisor. I've been working across industry for many, many years. Thank you all for joining us. Let's get straight to it, so some big questions that need to be answered there. I want to come to you first, Jason. Really simple question, straight out the gap that I'm sure many people are thinking. Is AI an existential threat, or is it an opportunity that businesses need to get to grips with?
Thanks, Colin. Great question to start us. And the answer is both. And this is down to how you view the market and how you look at AI in a business context. The reality is this is not going away. This isn't just a cloud 2.0. This isn't just another fad that will breeze by without having an impact. This fundamentally is a business technical change that is irreversible, that will impact us all in everyday life, both as citizens and within business.
How does a tool like that impact if we don't necessarily know all the skills that we've got within a workforce? I mean, where do you begin with all of this?
And I think that's the problem. Today, we see the advent of ChatGPT, or more human-level interfaces to artificial intelligence, which fundamentally is democratizing data sets that otherwise humans wouldn't have access to. And all of a sudden, at home, as a citizen, it's in our hands. We can log in and we can ask questions in a way that we can never ask before and get answers that we can never have dreamt of. And that really, really is changing us in a home setting, but we're bringing this into business as well. So whereas before we had a good idea in business of skill sets and from a human capital perspective, today we're seeing AI really shift the dial on what skills actually sit where. What humans are being augmented by algorithms that we may not know about anymore.
I know we were talking off camera, Darminder. I'll bring you in on this. Okay, so technology has the ability to propel us, but I mean, where do you begin to assess the skills you've got, the impact that AI could bring you from an efficiency and impact perspective? How do boardrooms know what they need to bring in and how to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to kind of broadly speak where we are today, I think where we are today is where the early adoption of generative AI and technologies such as that, the fear of missing out, that's broadly happened. Back to Jason's point, it's going to stick around and be here for a long time. Where we are today at the moment is this balance between innovation and getting results. And I think that's where boardrooms face that question broadly. It's about getting results. And in a business context, we get results by understanding what we want to apply technology to, the outcomes, the use cases. I think there is a maturity that needs to happen within organizations to fully understand what those use cases are. And I think there needs to be an appreciation about the expectation of this technology where we are today as well. 2 years ago, ChatGPT landed on the scenes. Everybody had high expectations that we were going to be landed with super intelligent tools, the new advent of productivity gains and revenue. I think where we are today is that the technology is still very much a task-driven technology. You need to work with it and apply it in different ways. That's an iterative way of working with technology that we're not used to, because that involves time, understanding, skills, and all those kind of broader questions come into play. So I think it's interesting to see what those use cases will be like, how those use cases will materialize over time. And I think where we will get to see some of those really good success stories in the future about how this technology then really can make a difference. But I think we haven't fundamentally got the foundations right at this point.
Lydia, I'm really interested here because we're hearing a lot there about the opportunity and the impact. Is there a risk we can become too reliant with AI? Is AI the silver bullet to everything? And business leaders are thinking, well, this is great. We just get a load of AIs in. We don't need our people. We don't need the staff. We fundamentally change our thinking. Or is it a balance? What do you think?
None of the above. I think it's really about thinking about the value that organizations bring to the table. Jason earlier was saying that this is a technical change, and I don't think that's the full story. This is a value change. What artificial intelligence brings is a new part of the value chain, creating new value where it never existed before. It's not just about the efficiency or anything like that. And obviously under that new value change is technical change. And so when we think about the existential risk, it's really about, does your organization today have any value in the future? Because business operations are changing, business models are changing. Just like when we had e-commerce and the internet started to become a thing, and websites didn't exist for all companies, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, we need a website, but what do we do with it? And they didn't understand how they can engage with their audience, their customers, how they could do sales online. And it's the same thing with AI. And so it's new value, new relationships.
And if I could just extend on that, I think the problem that we're seeing playing out is in business, we're programmed over the last 5-10 years of the cloud era. So we're used to cloud playing out as a disruptive technology, changing business models, changing commercial models, and also skill sets. The problem is that is far less dynamic and far less changing and far less invasive than artificial intelligence is. So we're almost in a false sense of security slightly at the moment, where we're expecting the same thing to play out. Take automation programs. How many automation programs have we had in the last 10 years that have failed? They haven't delivered the cost savings, they're complex to roll out, and everybody sees them as taking their job. So immediately you get a human capital level blocker in place. Our jobs will go, we won't do it, we haven't saved the money, we've spent millions and millions, we'll write that off and move forward. Everyone's in a false sense now that AI is there to deliver a similar thing. Okay, you're going to take my job. No, you're not. The automation program's failed. AI won't take my job. AI won't take the tasks that I do. Multiple tasks make up my job. And I think that's a really dangerous position to be in both from a self-evolution and a career perspective, but also when you're trying to recruit into your company new talent. What is the talent of the future then that you'll need if this type of technology is going to displace so many tasks?
You both touched on value rather than sort of cost return. Is there a potential for a clash between senior technical people and senior finance people when it comes to where are the returns and how do we measure and evidence the impact of AI? And does that need a rethink? Lydia, you mentioned value. What do you think?
I mean, this requires a lot of conversation with the board, with every single C-suite member, because this goes back to the identity of the organization. This is a disruptive technology. It will change how value is being delivered. And I do believe that for some companies, it will be existential. And so how you measure the value and how you're going to technically manage that value chain delivery, I think is going to be a conversation that needs to be had with everybody. Regarding HR and not taking jobs, as a matter of fact, there are some algorithms that have taken jobs successfully. And one example of this is Klarna. The CEO was very happy to tell everyone that he has reduced his costs because of algorithms. He has used customer service algorithms to replace 700 people. And then he also said that he expects to not have to hire anybody and that he's going to see his human resources costs go down. However, this is short-sighted. And it's short-sighted because he has reduced his costs for the business value he offers today. But his business value that he offers today is not going to be necessarily the same in 10 years. And if he doesn't have the human talent to get him to the next innovation, that's going to be a problem. So yes, AI can take some tasks, jobs, replace some values, but you still have to do the hard job of business defensibility.
The challenge we have today isn't necessarily how do we manage AI or algorithms not taking as many jobs, but it's more what career pathways do we put in place around the business so that when AI does displace a job, which it will, what are we doing as a company delivering against our purpose as Fujitsu to make sure that that human has the right career opportunities into whatever new role exists in the future for them.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think the opportunity here for a lot of companies is to think about being strategic in their operating environment. How can I do things differently? Because there's an opportunity here with AI itself, but also kind of those savings which are realized by those jobs which are done repetitively, releasing human capital into that kind of strategic outlook, forward-looking piece, and thinking about questions about how we could do things differently. So I think I think a couple of points ago, Jason mentioned about this is no longer the cloud era. Absolutely, because in the cloud era we could justify the innovation or the technology input because it was very rule based. It would do X and Y. It would be measured in this way because those constraints were known. In the AI era, those constraints are unknown. It's uncertain. It only gets played out by being experimental. So you need to be able to have processes in place which allow you to work with the technology in a very trial, experimental way, but measure the benefits as a result and then scale accordingly. So I think that this is also a broader issue about the AI technology itself. It is definitely how do I scale this technology to make the most benefit in my organization? Because it does well, let's say, in a POC environment, but then those questions about how does it do well broadly across my organization are unknown, and you have to do that iteratively and very experimentally.
Do we think leadership are open enough to change and looking at the right thing? And the reason I ask that question, I want to talk to you about some research that you guys will know this far better than I, but recent Fujitsu research, this was based on interviews with 3,700 employees across Europe. It revealed that 48% of junior employees think the benefit of AI lies in its ability to improve skills. So like half of junior talent across the interviewees in Fujitsu are on board with this, thinking it's going to improve things. Did leadership share the same? And how does leadership act on findings such as this? Not just Fujitsu, but businesses in general. Jason, what do you think? You're Chief Digital Officer.
So I think this is as much cultural as it is anything else in terms of a demographic of colleague that we have within Fujitsu or any organization. You'll look at technology in a different way and value it in a different way, i.e., is this of value to me and will this help me versus is this a threat and will this cost money? And I think traditionally in business, we're around cost control, reduction of costs, mitigation, limitation of risk. And that's a typical board mentality of a board that's been there for 20, 30 years. I think the more emerging talent and junior talent of today see emerging technology in a whole new different way. They look at this stuff in relation to how does this help me? How can I get superhuman type skill sets by adopting this emerging technology, allowing me to operate at a level of someone 20 years ahead of their career? So this is mindset and culture, and then having the ability and the appetite to take the risk to try it.
So it sort of strikes me then, if we've got the AI that's empowering staff and we're achieving greater efficiency, we're more creative, we're achieving more growth as press and speakers such as us are regularly telling people. How do you begin to understand what is the AI doing versus where's the skill of staff? Because you're going to need that information for their own development, right? How you push them, that strikes me that's a bit of a minefield and quite a challenge for HR, who are probably watching this thinking, hang on a second, guys, I'm already quite busy. How do we get to grips with that, Lydia?
I think it's co-creation. So individuals that perform a job, a task, they understand the value that they're bringing. And I think that we need to educate employees across the business to say, this is what algorithms can do. This is what data centricity looks like. These are the types of data that exist, and help every individual in the organization come and say, you know what, I've got all this data. I listened to your workshop. I have all this data. This is what I think I can do with it. And for them, it's about increasing the speed to their value delivery. And so they can themselves start to experiment and say, I want to try this and this and this because this will help me go faster, instead of somebody at the top deciding what will be faster for them. So co-creation.
I guess the the challenge that we see, to Darminder, to your point, how do we blame an algorithm, right? So how do we experiment? How do we do all the cool things that we love to do that is deemed at the top as costing a lot of money and taking risk? When it goes wrong, really wrong, who will accept it was the algorithm's fault?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. I mean, these are the ones unknown uncertainties, and my own personal opinion is why organisations haven't fully adopted AI at this point is because they don't have the right governance in place at this point. That's probably because they don't understand the risks, or necessarily where the technology works well, doesn't work well. So I mean, back to Lydia's point, it is about communication. It's about telling this is what the algorithm does well, that doesn't do well. I mean, to take an analogy, Google's model cards, for example, every model that's created has a list of metadata associated with that. This is what the model does, the data it was trained on, the outcomes that were achieved. So you get full visibility, transparency of, if I'm about to apply some model to my problem, I'm aware what the potential outcomes are going to be like before you actually try it out. So that's a cost saving potentially, because you don't really pick a model and find out it costs you so much to run it or train it, only to realize that it was wrong. So I think these kind of things have to be put in place. It is about data maturity per se. It's about understanding the value that data has as an asset, and then recognizing that combination of algorithm to data and the outcomes is the things which are achieved as a result, recording that, making that visible, transparent to your organization.
When we were talking about this over the last 6-7 weeks, there was a question that you framed, Darminder, that I'm really intrigued to get into, where you said, has AI masked the need to be data literate? What do you think about it? I mean, that's such a big question when we're talking about data, AI. You rightly said at the start, Jason, that task orientated, so we've got to get the instructions right to get the right outputs. But if you're not data literate, I mean, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were to ask a lot of people from the creative industries, they will say their job is now as a prompt engineer. I ask the models to create me this visual image for my advertising campaign or something along those lines. It's about recognizing the most appropriate data to apply with your prompt, recognizing what good looks like, what bad looks like. I think that's where the skill set lies for a lot of, let's say, the future of applying AI in a business context. You do need domain experts. Fundamentally, AI is trained on the data that it's been made available to it to be trained. So it might not have everything, but I mean, I'll mention the a recent article that's just come out recently. Stanford University have just recently published an article saying AI has actually got to the same scale as answering questions on social survey data. So they're thinking about basically AI models being a social proxy to humans, because they've learned enough context to understand how humans would answer particular social surveys. But that's a different example. Of course, it doesn't relate to sort of enterprise problems, but it's about that match between quality of data, having appropriate data that matches the problem that you're trying to solve, and then seeing these results play out. Because then, if you can get to a quality where you can begin to automate, let's say 80% of those activities, then you're thinking about those benefits and things which can materialize as a result.
You've all mentioned collaboration and working together. What about AI fostering a permissionless way of working for staff? Is that ultimately positive for business? And I'm really interested to get both your opinions, Jason and Darminder, so we have both the opportunity from the business side of it and also the technical answer here. Jason, what do you think?
Permissionless, I think we're way off that, and I think everyone's touched on this, that governance and oversight is key. So if we don't have the right governance models and oversight models and the ability to make our employees, our colleagues, feel psychologically safe, so they know what decisions can be made and what can't be made, using algorithms as a route to make that decision, If that's not in place, it's really dangerous, really, really dangerous, because all of a sudden you're putting intelligence in the hands of people that aren't trained or have a business acumen of how to use that intelligence, that ultimately could look to expose business risk, cost more money, or, you know, in some instances, serious security threats.
Is that not empowerment, though, of your workforce and
it is
supercharging them to go and achieve more? Is that
of course, and it's a fine balance between the two. We need to strike the balance, and it needs to be a controlled balance and a controlled introduction. I think today we're at the hype curve, especially of Gen AI, everybody playing with it in work, playing with it at home. I think we're coming out of the hype curve now, and business is starting to stand back and say, hang on a minute, this could be really good or it could be really bad. And we need to make sure that it's good, it delivers value, and our colleagues are empowered by it. But it takes the whole business to understand that.
Do you think the right protocols are in place? And I know we've spoken previously about ethics of AI and the parameters of AI. And I should say, if you're interested in a deeper piece around the ethics of AI, you should go and take a look at the interview Darminder did during DSCI. It gets into a lot more detail. But look, DSCI was 5-6 months ago. Have we come on enough since then? Are we on track for being better, or are we still a way off?
I just fundamentally believe it's going to be an evolving piece that has to be played every time a new feature, a new innovation within the algorithm takes place. So, you know, for example, OpenAI's chip GPT-4o, that has emotive features built into the model. If you want to play with it, it will give you answers in language or at a tone that you are comfortable with, or develop a relationship with. That's a responsible, ethical question here. How much do we want our users to become embedded into the model?
So it'll respond to me in a way emotionally that I want.
Correct. Yes. Built on a tone or a preference that you like. But just back to the point. I think so. Coming from an engineering background, as an engineer, I like to know about the structure, the components that I'm going to put in place to make a solution possible, and measure and record what works well, doesn't work well. We're in this phase where the algorithm innovation is taking place far quicker than how we can keep up with the ways in which we can measure responsibility around it. So that has to be in place, and you need to understand, especially from the advent of generative AI, what are the correct guardrails for me to use? How can I put those guardrails in place? Because the technologies do exist there to allow you to do that, but it needs that human input. It needs that engineering mindset to think about how that works well, so that the models themselves perhaps become more self-aware around what works well and the answers I should be giving. And that's a training process at the end of the day.
I'd like you for a moment, Jason, to explain what you meant when you said to me, technology operates on a trident. You were talking to me about speed, cost.
And what we've seen evolve over the last 5 years, in IT, we're typically programmed into 3 core things. When we create a product to go to market, high quality, low cost, do it really quick, the speed by which we can do it to remain competitive. And normally you can pick 2, you can't have all 3, right? So you can't have it really cheap and high quality and really quick. It just doesn't work. And actually what AI is beginning to do is democratize and flatten that typical triangle that we see. So all of a sudden, somebody that might not be skilled in it at all could create something that's high quality, could do it really fast, could do it really cheap, could go to market straight away. The question is, how do they know it's at the right quality? How do they know that's what the market needs? So you still need an element of human intelligence as well, but it's also creating more risk, because the more people feel drawn into this ecosystem, the more they will release products or assets, and the more it potentially exposes them. So I think it's a really interesting time that we're at, whereby all of a sudden we can have all 3. The question is, how do you control that and govern that in a way that is risk, that manages the risk?
So is AI going to be a leveling playing field, or do you think we're a way off that, Darminder?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think only time will tell. I don't know if Lydia, do you have an answer for that?
I do.
Go for it.
It's my answer is the thesis of my forthcoming book, Imagination Dilemma, which is that when technology can do everything for us, what's left is imagination, and that's a competitive advantage. And so it goes back to business defensibility. We all have access to AI, the cloud, you name it. So how are you different than your competitor? And furthermore, how are you going to compete with a smaller company that has access to these tools but does it differently? And so it's really about experimenting and really about seeing what's on the edge of the use case. And this goes back to value. What is the value that you're actually bringing? And how is your customer base looking for new value?
I'm pleased you brought up competitive advantage. So I want to bring in, going back to the Fujitsu statistics from your brilliant report, but the same report I spoke about earlier, where 3,700 employees across Europe were researched, it were revealed that 75% of the C-suite think AI rollouts are taking longer than planned. So if that's happening, where's going to be the motivation for people to do more, and all the points that we've been talking about that's going to empower their workforce? How do we bridge that challenge, Jason?
I think we need to remember the lens by which these people are looking at a slow rollout. I think history tells us that their baseline of a rollout from a technology perspective is your Microsoft rollout, your Exchange rollout, or your cloud migration. So
you're in danger of showing your age.
I know. So as humans, we've built baselines, right? So we all have a baseline of what a rollout would be from a technical perspective and the time it should take. Yep. The mistake that we're seeing is C-suite or middle management are applying the same metrics of rollout to something that is massively different, both in terms of complexity and reach. So I don't feel that the same rules apply. And actually, I would expect the rollout to take potentially longer because of the amount of, number one, the data it touches and the people that it actually impacts.
In line with that, I just want to go back to the return on investment point, because for what it's worth, I think you're all right with the value, and the lens needs to be shifted, and we probably need to restructure. But where do leaders start with this? I mean, if I'm a CEO watching this and I'm nodding away thinking, well, this sounds great. I want my workforce propelled. I'd like to see mundane tasks taken away and thinking time, Lydia, given to our teams to go and create that competitive advantage. As the CEO, I'm thinking, where do I start with this? Who do I get in the room? Who am I having conversations with? So let's help some of the viewers. Where's starting point on this?
The S-curve. So when a product, service, etc. gets on the S-curve, it's like slow, and it's slowly then everything picks up. The market starts to adopt it. And then at the end of the S-curve, it starts to plateau because it's reached as much of the market it's going to reach, and it's time for an innovation. The return on investment needs to focus on that plateau and say, how are we going to boost our next growth? How are we going to boost the next value to the market? So I think that it should be focused on the growth of the company and how it can grow in the various ways, value, but also cost reduction and efficiency and all that.
Darminder, when we spoke a while ago, you were talking about the potential for silo working. And the question was asked of both yourself and Jason, was AI going to fix the silo problem, or was it going to create more silos? Both of you, what do you think? Are we going to see less silo working, more silo working with the evolution of AI?
So in my view, you will get to see applications of technology be done on sort of business to business unit level for the minute. Because typically back to where do CEOs start? CEOs have got to address a number of things. Broadly speaking, how do I keep myself competitive in my marketplace? How do I bring in more revenue, market share? So there's two aspects to that, and we've touched on both of them already. I mean, we talked about currently where we are today is that a lot of people are thinking about the cost and keeping those business operations running as per normal at a reduced cost base. Where Lydia's point about getting to the top of the S-curve, that return on investment, thinking about the strategic view about growth, that's where AI could potentially be used as well. But it's a case of where you are on that scale. For organizations and CEOs, that's going to be a different scale for every organization. So there's a question about where to start and what are my main challenge points to help me basically be competitive, broadly speaking, before I can start thinking about the future growth aspect on this aspect, on these technologies. So I think what we'll see is that the technology being pinpointed at core parts of the business, which, let's say, makes more sense from a financial perspective, keeping me competitive. and then maybe perhaps scaling out to other business units. Where we are with the technology today, I'm not going to sort of articulate the state of land around data and how data is used in an enterprise, but typically data is collected in an enterprise. It's usually centrally located in an area where it's then served as applications to other users. Now, that data that you've collected becomes a huge potential opportunity to apply it with some sort of large language model, generative AI technology, which, back to our point about democratizing technology and technology to users becomes possible. That permissionless layers, ways of working. But you have to kind of then focus on where those areas make more sense, measure it, make that return on investment business case, which is where we are today. It's that balance between innovation and results, where organizations find themselves. Back to points about how do we measure, how do we enforce that culture of change. These are all things that will make a difference. So I think we will eventually get to that point. But it's, in my view, it's a number of iterations to happen before we do that.
And I think initially this will cause more silos. Okay, I don't think initially this will be good for business. I think we have a big problem from a colleague perspective with return to work, as it is. Okay, pre-COVID, post-COVID, majority of colleagues or employees across the world have realised they don't need to go into an office; they can stay at home. Now, not only can I stay at home, I have unfiltered access to AI services that my corporate network blocks. Okay, so all of a sudden, the very tools that I'm using to make me potentially more superhuman than I would be in work are even more powerful when I'm home than when I'm in work. So actually, coming to work removes some of those superpowers, because normally you're under an IT policy management tool that restricts you. So it's a really interesting, from a human behavior and dynamic perspective, it's a really interesting one that we need to fix. And actually, FOMO, the fear of missing out, is a really good tool for this. It's our job in work to educate our people, to educate our colleagues, and to give them access to things such as Microsoft Copilot, so that they can start to have more efficiencies in the way they work. And for that, they need enablement, training, and with that, human connection. So actually bringing colleagues back into the office, offering more Q&A, questioning, and answering the questions that they don't feel they can ask over a call. They want face-to-face time. I'm seeing so many more colleagues of a certain demographic not want to publicly post in a forum because they're embarrassed that they should know it. And actually the divide that we're seeing playing out is that the, let's call it for argument's sake, the junior talent 3 to 5 years in your career have no problem in asking any question or just going home and diving in and working it out. A certain cohort above that, 20, 30 years in business, opposite. Where do I post? Someone will see my name. Who can I talk to? Don't tell them that I'm trying to catch up. So there's a really serious human problem playing out that we really need to get to grips with alongside this thing called artificial intelligence, so we can fuse them together in the right way.
So that's process, staff motivation, and I guess the third one, the most important one, is culture. This has all got to be looked at in detail then.
Correct. And this is the same as the cloud era of culture as a service, spending, empower our people to do the right thing. Only this is more invasive on everything that we do from a business process and potentially far more disruptive than we've ever seen before.
Plus it will happen more quickly because of the pace of the AI innovation. So hence the need to be more adaptive and agile, which is broadly speaking very, very easy for smaller SMEs to do compared to larger organizations. But I think it's a mindset change to think about how organizations can become more disruptive within themselves. Think about it as a task force, set up a task force and say, look, answer me this question, go and find out if it's possible.
Sorry, go on, Lydia.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Jason said. I think that it's wonderful to bring people in, but it's not just enough to teach and train, because that puts them in a passive position, but they need to be part of the solution. And so it's also about telling them, hey, I'm telling you this much, now I need you to tell me what we're gonna do with it. Because those 20 years in the business, they know how the business functions, and they know where there's gaps and problems. If they're now understand how AI can help, then they can say, great, I wanna do this. How can I do that? Their questions are gonna be different. And I think it'll scale up faster the adoption of AI in a more useful way for the organization.
I agree, but that is chicken and egg. And it's fine if you're in an organization with 1,000 people. when you're in an organization with 125,000 people, with so many business functions, it's really hard to orchestrate from a central or command and control perspective. So I agree, even at scale, you need people to experiment, but to experiment, they need access and enablement and education on what they can experiment with. Also, it's really interesting that actually then all of a sudden, IT becomes a blocker because people can't access what they need to access in work to innovate, to drive the business forward. So there's an IT maturity problem in terms of access that also needs to evolve. So this is a really complex problem. This isn't just evolving the people on the ground. This is evolving all aspects of business. Finance, so they understand the different cost models. IT, so they understand that. Procurement, so they see the different procurement. The whole business landscape.
But if you get this right, you free up a big cohort of resource that you can deploy in other stuff, right? Which is where your efficiency and opportunity comes in.
Potentially, yeah, absolutely. So it does two things. I mean, basically, if your organisation which is not in a position of having lots and lots of resource available, then it opens opportunities for you to do more interesting things for less, essentially. And those kind of ways of working. So I think, I think I would probably say that it will has the potential to release a lot of value into the organisation as a result of these kind of process change and these cultural change that we've been talking about so far.
I somewhat disagree. Because history has shown us, and history doesn't always repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And history has shown us that the more technology we have that has helped us reduce our labor, the more that we have been expected to produce. And so when the computer came about, it only gave us more work, not less, because now we were able to type more. We didn't have to use a typewriter and have all these edits that we had to do and retype things. Then we could just like backspace and then write again. And then the internet came along, and then it was like, oh, well, now I can send emails to offices all around the world. I don't have to send it in the mail, in the snail mail, and wait for the postal service to deliver it. And then so now it's like, now we can send more. And Zoom further does that. And so in a day, we're expected to do far more than before. And so I anticipate that with these technologies, what it's going to do is it's going to free up some things, but it's going to open up new possibilities to create new value. And as a result, the expectation that we're going to have to do more.
And I think this is where the loop comes back round, because it's how we started, right? This will fundamentally disrupt the world we know today. It will fundamentally create new jobs that we can't even see today. We don't even know what these jobs are. What we do know is that we won't be doing less, we'll be doing more in something different. That's what we know. And our job in big enterprise is to make sure that first and foremost, our people evolve with the technology. So it's fine removing tasks from people, but how are we evolving those for the next big thing? How do we envision the next, to your point, Lydia, what is the next version of our company? And how do we refactor our people to focus on that?
So if I'm an employee watching this and thinking, okay, I had a fear about being replaced by technology, I should now be thinking I'm going to be enabled to grow, scale, do bigger and better things, contribute more to the business, which is going to have a positive impact on my career. Agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what in my view, what will happen is, as back to Jason's point, as Lydia's point, doing more, producing more because we can now do it. It will enable us to sharpen our own sort of human level skills, our empathy, our communication, our networking, things which we don't think about in our day-to-day work. We think about, I've got to finish this task. Once I've finished it, that's it. Organizations do have leadership programs, leadership skill programs, but it's like a tick in a box. You've done it, you move on to the next one. I think we'll have more time to collaborate more as well as team members and communicate and collaborate. I think that's where the benefit is, because for me, when I look at this technology, there's an opportunity here for someone to say, look, I've got 20% available now. Is there anything else for me to do in the organization to help you out? I've got these skill sets. Being more vocal about what they can offer and how they can do that and what that benefit brings to the organization. So organizations are able to become more transparent about availability and what skill sets exist in the organization. And bring those people and work on different ways and different programs, because everybody wants a different challenge, right? They don't want to be pigeonholed into doing these things. You're good at it, you keep on doing it. Mm-hmm. People want opportunities to progress, to be able to grow themselves, up the career level, and being able to then showcase those skill sets in different ways. that's the forum that potentially this technology can create.
Darminder, Lydia, Jason, thank you very, very much. Absolutely fascinating. I'm sure you've probably got questions you want to address, but hopefully we've given you some food for thought to think about how your own organization's journey can commence with this wonderful opportunity that AI brings about, and start to see that it really is an enabler for your organization and not something to be feared. Just think about those value and competitive advantage messages we heard. Guys, thank you very much. See you again soon.